All right, so I just got back from watching Final Destination Bloodlines, the sixth Final Destinations film. So I've been kind of looking forward to this one. I'm not the biggest fan of the Final Destinations series. I think if you like movies in that style, that early 2000s, late 90s teen horror type movie, Final Destination is definitely one for you. Actually like the first two, and I don't really like any of the other ones after that. 3, 4, and 5 are just kind of eh. 4 is pretty bad. 3 is eh. And 5 is also eh. But 1 and 2 I really liked. It's got a clever idea. The idea being that there is this big tragedy that happens, but it turns out to be a premonition of a future tragedy that a certain character has, warns a bunch of people. Some people make it out because of this premonition, and now Death feels cheated and starts going after people one by one. And that happens in every movie. And so the movie is basically about a bunch of people trying to survive Death killing them in over the top, completely ridiculous, sort of like Rube Goldman machines of death sort of scenarios. And so the part of the charm of this series is seeing all the different creative ways people can die and developing irrational fears of everyday objects, such as, in the second film, it is log trucks. In the third film, it's tanning beds, and so on and so forth. So none of the movies are great. I think the first two are pretty good. They do what they can with the formula, and then the three after that are just kind of regurgitating the same old thing. They're frankly kind of boring, with a couple of fun deaths thrown in there, but the story is just kind of lame. Thankfully, with this, I think it's been 14 years since the fifth one, Final Destination Bloodlines finally breathes new life into this franchise. It's still the same basic premise, a bunch of people trying to avoid death, and death is coming after them. And that's the story, but they make it so it's not just a generic legacy sequel. They don't over-explain the lore. They don't give a backstory to death or, explain too many things. They keep it a mystery, because that's kind of where the suspense and the fear comes from, is you don't really know how this works. And the rules that do exist, they follow. They don't really add any new rules, except for one new interesting wrinkle, which actually makes the movie more interesting. I don't want to spoil it, but there is one new element in this film that makes things more interesting. But any rules that the previous 5 films set up, this movie follows it, which I appreciated. But that's not why the movie is good. The movie is good because it actually makes you care about the characters, because you're more invested when you don't necessarily want to see these people die. And this movie does a good job of that. A lot of these movies they're just cookie cutter characters. Sometimes they make them so unlikable that you want them to die, and then other times they're just so boring that you don't care if they die. They're just so lame. But this one, actually, I feel like they're not, this isn't like, Shakespearean level drama here, okay? But for Final Destination, it's pretty good drama. The acting is good. I was invested in their story. I don't think there was anybody in this movie I really wanted to see die, which, was new for a Final Destinations movie. And then the actual deaths themselves were pretty creative. They weren't just the same old stuff. They know what you're expecting to happen, and then they don't do that. I don't want to spoil exactly what I mean by that, but if you have seen any of these movies, you can kind of predict how someone's gonna die by the 4th movie, or even the 3rd movie, really. And this movie kind of knows that. And so if you're a fan of Final Destination, it kind of tries to keep you on your toes a little bit. So I appreciated that. I had a good time with this one. It's definitely not for everybody. If you don't like gore, if you're kind of squeamish about, seeing blood and guts and that sort of stuff, don't watch this movie. If you don't like horror movies, don't watch this movie. But if you kind of like movies that don't take themselves too seriously, that know they're kind of ridiculous, but they still have fun with the premise. And you don't mind a gory movie, this is a good time. If you are a Final Destinations fan, I think you will love this movie. It's a pretty good one. But if you don't like any of that, stay away from this movie. It's not for you. But it's definitely worth a watch in the theater, just to watch it with a crowd. I enjoyed watching it with a crowd and seeing everybody's reactions to the shocking events of the film. It was quite entertaining for me. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Final Destination Bloodlines.